Howdy, Jared Sessler here. Had to get all dressed up today so I could go on TV. So somehow this late in the day, I still have this stuff on. So I thought, you know what? I should do a live video. All right. Oh, I'm getting it on Instagram. Somehow the audio got turned on that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about climate change. I'm going to completely dismantle it and upset a bunch of weirdos, probably. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you something that you may not have heard about and a little bit of history on immigration and something that it sounds like Joe Obama is going to do tomorrow. I understand that there is a executive order in the works that will essentially legalize the citizenship for as many as several 100,000, but it could be more than that, of these invaders who have come into our country. And so there was a time when especially people in the House and Senate were saying, oh my goodness, the Democrats are going to use these open borders to try to pad the voter rolls, to try to increase the census data. Now, the census data, the reason why they would want to increase the census data is because it manipulates the congressional races, the congressional seats. And so that they hate the Electoral College. And so a way to skirt the Electoral College without abolishing it, which would be completely dumb, is to stuff the citizens in certain areas. We saw this when Obama was in office in Minnesota, or Minneapolis, where it was Minnesota, where he brought in refugees from, I believe it was Somalia, and several 100,000, and that's how we got Ilhan Omar, because her district is packed full of those folks. No America-loving person would vote for someone who worships Islam, because they cannot take the oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution, because they don't believe in it, and it's against that. But anyways, tomorrow, evidently, Joe Obama is going to sign this executive order. Now, the reason why it's important, now many of you would say rightly that an executive order is not a law, that kind of thing has to go through Congress. But again, let's go back to Obama when he signed DACA, which he signed as an executive order. And what really put the rubber stamp, or the confirmation on the DACA in terms of its future. Now DACA, also called Dreamers, basically it covered minors. So minors that came across the border, maybe not in their own control, or maybe with a family member, or maybe on their own. They were sent from their families for a better life, or who knows what. DACA essentially gave those folks a pathway to citizenship. Now, these are minors, and so it was sort of a humanitarian thing. I'm talking about from a marketing standpoint, in the eyes of Americans. There wasn't as much of a pushback on it, because, like a lot of things that the woke left does, is they couch it in something that would be so socially unacceptable to oppose, sort of like deporting the invaders who've come across the border, whatever, 10, 12, 15 million of them this last few years, since this illegitimate administration took over from President Trump. It just is a wrong view. We are very blessed to be in America, and there is a process for migrating to America. We do not have the capacity to handle the entire world, and there are laws in order for how to get here, and they have to be followed, and these people didn't follow them, so they're federal criminals as a result as soon as they come across the border, and we're treating them as if they're coming for amnesty, which is supposed to be reserved for people who are actually seeking some sort of political asylum for some valid reason. So anyway, the reason why that's important, and it ties to what could potentially happen tomorrow, is the Supreme Court looked at DACA after it was challenged, and Obama signed it, and the Supreme Court basically said that you can't mess with citizenship. So essentially, because the executive order was signed and the message was sent out and it was shared with the public, and these people were told, like, hey, you now have a pathway to citizenship, that it could not be taken away. And so it's that framework, it's that model that this illegitimate Joe Obama administration is using for this executive order tomorrow. And the rumors of it being for only 500,000 people are, in my basically would be my guess, is that is probably wildly low. They want to use it for many more than that. They lie about everything. Just the week before last, they signed an executive order saying that they were going to limit the invaders to 2,500 a day. It's still over 10,000 a day 2 weeks later. They have no intention of securing the border. They are panicking because they have a short amount of time. They know that the election is on the line. I'm sure they have plans to try to steal it, but anyway, that's what's happening, and it'll be quite interesting to see what actually goes down tomorrow, and how the American people respond to it, because there's history and precedence there, and unfortunately, in that particular case, I agree with the Supreme Court. I don't agree with what Obama did with DACA. I wouldn't agree with what Joe Obama is doing here with this order. But when you give someone, see, and I said this back when it was going on, you cannot mess with citizenship. If you give someone citizenship or a pathway to citizenship without them messing that pathway up or doing something so incredibly egregious that they lose it, then you've given. I mean, that's how valuable citizenship is in this country, and why it's so important that we protect it, and why it's so important that we follow our process and our laws for how people can come into this state and into this country. So I always forget to pull up the comments. Yeah, so nice, Steve. Interest in finding out your climatology degree. Great. Well, I will explain it to you, and you can whine and complain all you want if you oppose me, but what I'm going to tell you here is the truth. And then let's see, Tom Flory says, Trump is potentially +2 in Washington. Is it genuine? Can we flip the state in November? I certainly hope so. I want to leverage that with all my might to try to get Republicans out to vote. I want to encourage people to register to vote, especially if you haven't lost your mind or been infected by whatever this disease is that many people on the left seem to have. So I want to encourage that. And I also want to tell you that when I get elected, I have a plan for how we take Washington back. That's not just talk. I'm on a live public video. I would expect you to shove this back in my face if I don't deliver on that. I absolutely will. I am very excited about it. And basically what it encompasses, and there's a lot of details to it, but it encompasses inspiring people in Eastern Washington to stop just complaining about what Western Washington is doing and start going on offense. Just like I'm going to go on offense when I go back to Washington, D.C. to represent the people, represent we the people. I want Eastern Washington folks to go on offense against Western Washington, against their lunatic policies. And I'll be able to explain how we're going to do that. And I'm very excited about that. And, if there's anything that I want to do, I absolutely want to take the state back and just get rid of this lunacy. So, okay, I'm almost 10 minutes in and I still haven't started climate change yet. So that was my introduction. And I'll try to buzz through this. I am doing this straight off memory. I've studied this over the last few months, but really not in great depth. I don't know if you guys know, but running for Congress takes a lot of time. And so I have to carve out sections of time when I want to do research. This particular one was something I did mainly late into one night because I was so tipped over about this thing. And so let me tell you, first of all, ask you a question. Have you ever heard of the Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption? And most of you will say what? Yes or no? Put it in the comments. Have you ever heard of the Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption? And let me just tell you while you're answering there in the comments, which, by the way, I'm not an expert at all this stuff, but definitely do your thing with liking and subscribing and sharing and all that crazy stuff that we have to do to make this social media stuff work. I'm banned on well, shadow banned horribly on Twitter, even though Elon Musk is the owner. And shadow banned, which I can explain why on each of these. Shadow banned on Facebook and on YouTube. I get those little marks on YouTube. We had a video that I did in Washington D.C. that got millions of views in a few days, and YouTube shut it down, started taking away the views for the last couple of years, and now it's down to like, I don't know, a couple 100,000 views or something so crazy. Watch the thing go negative. Like if somebody watched it, how can the views go away, right? Okay, so go ahead and write in the comments. I don't see anybody making comments, so maybe nobody's listening. Let's see. Can't post comments from some destinations. Oh, well, interesting. Well, hopefully you can put your comments here. Does that work? Look at that. Made a comment. Okay, here is the thing. The Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption was the largest geological event of our lives. And most of you have not made a comment because you haven't heard of it. So how is it that the Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption is literally the largest geological event of our lives and you've never heard of it? And I'll tell you why. The reason why is it completely dismantles the entire current climate change argument. That's why they don't want to talk about it, because it dismantles their argument. They have no argument with this. So I'm gonna explain it to you so that you kind of get your arms around what it did. The Hunga Tonga eruption was out in the Pacific Ocean, South Pacific near Tonga, and it blew the equivalent of 250,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water into the stratosphere in just a short period of time. So just think about that. You know how big an Olympic swimming pool is, right? Like hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. Now multiply that by 250,000 swimming pools. That's how much water was vaporized and blown into the stratosphere in a steam form. And so how would that affect the climate? How would that affect it? Well, it would. You have all this moisture up in the stratosphere, right? 250,000 Olympic swimming pools full of water. That equivalent turned to a steam or into a gas form, and you pump it into the stratosphere. So what would happen? What would happen in a case like that? Oh, look, there's people riding some quads across our property. Awesome. We have the river is right down there, and so people sometimes cut across our property, but that's all right. They go fishing down there and goofing off. So what would the effect of that be? Well, it would create kind of this sauna effect, right? And so engineers estimate that it would take around 7 years for all of that water to repatriate itself back to the planet, which it naturally will do. And I would imagine, if you think about this, it's probably kind of a cleaning mechanism, right? Because there's dust or stuff floating. And the stratosphere, to be clear, when you go in an airplane and you fly, you take off and you fly and you go through the clouds and then you pop up above the clouds. Well, there's no weather up there. There's no rain. There's no nothing. There's no thunderstorms. There's no weather. The weather happens below the clouds. That's the way God designed it. So the stratosphere is actually above that. It's like this basically this massive amount of space between the clouds and it actually starts above the clouds, but between there and the edge of the atmosphere. And so all this moisture goes up there, and maybe it collects stuff, I don't know, cleans up the atmosphere, and then it eventually comes back to Earth. But while it's there, it creates a sauna effect on the Earth, and it'll increase the temperature of the Earth maybe 2 or 3 degrees. But that's not all of the reason why, in terms of why this story dismantles the whole climate change argument. It's not just that this natural event that had absolutely nothing to do with human intervention caused the Earth's temperature to go up. And by the way, it's totally natural, and maybe it's cleaning the atmosphere. Maybe it's like like when you push the rinse and repeat or spin and rinse or whatever on your washing machine. God designed the earth to like shoot water up into the atmosphere, help clean it, so it's like cleaning the windshield on your car or something, and then all that water eventually resettles back down to the earth. I don't know, but the bottom line is that it's a natural event. It has nothing to do with human interaction, and it increases the temperature of the planet. So that's the reason why the news doesn't want to report it to you. So now let's take it a little bit further. A couple things. When you look at the amount of water that flows, I want to talk about something else related to this, but when you look at the amount of water that flows down rivers, a lot of people, and I live in farmland, there's a big argument about water. There's no shortage of water. I mean, you lay your head down on the pillow at night and you sleep for hours while there's millions of gallons of water rushing past in the rivers. We live literally right on a river here, probably close to 300 feet wide in front of our property, and there's millions of gallons that flow through that thing every single night while we're sleeping, and that water is not used. So we don't have a shortage of water. There's no shortage of water. What we have is a regulation problem. We have an access to water problem. So you think about this, and there's a lot more water that actually flows down these rivers than is ever dropped in rain or snow. So where does that water come from? How does the water recycle itself up to the tops of these mountains so that it can then flow back down nonstop for 365 days a year? How does that cycle work? And I used to always think, rather unthinkingly, that the water just came in the form of snow or rain, and then it just melted and it just kept the rivers full. But there's not enough. There's not enough of it on the mountains to fill the rivers. It doesn't melt. There's just not enough. And so I started researching it. And again, this kind of goes into the cycle of the earth and God's amazing design. It also touches on petroleum products and the lunacy of this marketing term called fossil fuels, which is a complete lie. It annoys the crap out of me. Even people on the right are so stuck on using that stupid term. Fossil fuels is a complete lie. It's a marketing term. So how does the water get up there? How does it get up to the top of the mountains and then flow back down? Well, it does it essentially through fissures, or an internal process in the earth where first of all, you have to know that the earth is 8,000 miles in diameter. So this is the earth, the whole ball, right? From this hand to this hand is 8,000 miles. So it's all the way across here. It's 8,000 miles across in diameter. So the circumference is going to be whatever. Let's see. Pi r, I think, is the so it'd be 3.14 times pi times the radius would be the circumference. I don't remember. I am an engineer and I am really good at math, but I don't remember what it is. But my point is it's multiple times around in terms of the circumference. The diameter, that's just going right through the center, is 8,000 miles. So it's much farther to go all the way around it, right? And so what happens is inside of that inside the earth, you have all these different layers, right? And supposedly the internal layer is a heat layer. It's like basically a molten, like it's on fire. There's even some people that believe, and this could very well be true, that there's even like a massive steely inside of there that's spinning, and that has some effect on the helping with gravity and with the rotation of the earth and the momentum and just it's keeping it on axis and turning and do all this stuff. Well, we do know. How you doing, pup? How you doing, pups? You gonna say hi to everyone? Huh? You gonna say hi? You guys want to see Hazel? There's Hazel and Quincy. Yeah, they're just coming to say hi, and if I pet them, they're never gonna go away. So, what are you looking at, Quincy? You got those steely eyes, like the center of the earth. So, okay, so I don't want to lose track of where I'm going here, but there's a lot of water that is stored inside the earth. And it's interesting because this also ties into the flood, which is very interesting. I've never I never really studied it, but I remember years ago somebody telling me that, oh, well, the atmosphere can store a lot of water and the earth stores a lot of water, and that's how God flooded the earth way back when. And it's quite true. It could very well be true that a lot of water could be, because you think about the earth is 8,000 miles in diameter, but when you go out from here to the edge of the atmosphere, it's like it's a long ways. It's many miles. I mean, a mile is around 5,280 feet. And we know that airplanes fly at roughly like 40,000, 35, 30, 30, 40,000 feet. So it's several miles up. But that's just the start of the atmosphere. It actually goes quite a bit further. And so the atmosphere, especially in the stratosphere, could store a lot of water, because you got to think about just the size of it. I mean, the farther out you go, the bigger diameter you have and the more space you have. And within the 8,000 mile diameter ball, there's a lot of pockets and cavities and storage for water. And it's quite interesting because that water flows in and through the earth, and I believe that it is somewhat powered by the heat. So remember this heated core. So it turns the water to steam. It creates pressure. It pushes the water up and out. Well, that's part of how the water flows through that pressure mechanism. It flows up into the mountains through the ground. And so, it's really interesting because one of the highest points on our property, we have water just coming up out of the ground. It's probably, I'm guessing that it's about 50 or 60 feet as far as earth, the ground level above the river. So it's not like the river's like low or something. It's flowing over there. It's like above. It's one of the highest points on our property. We just have water just flowing out of it because there's pressure underneath it in the earth. And I'm telling you, there is this mechanism within the earth. And remember this too. The earth is 1/3 land and 2/3 water. So there's a lot of water on the planet, and it goes very deep into the ocean, like miles deep. It's crazy how deep it is. And so that water can flow through the earth and up to help feed these rivers and streams and stuff, because there just isn't enough water that comes down in rainfall or melt off or all that kind of thing. And so, okay, so what does that have to do with climate change, and how do we tie this all together? Okay. So, oh, there's a funny looking bug. Wow, that thing's crazy. Looks like a crane fly, but like one that maybe drank some nuclear juice or something. God's creativity. So tell me what the forms of life are. Okay, what are the forms of life? And this is very important, okay? The number one thing that most people think of, especially in farmland and agricultural world, is photosynthesis. Remember photosynthesis when we were in school? So you have plants that are in the ground, and they draw in minerals and moisture, and they draw that up into the plant, and then the sun acts on those minerals and that moisture, and magic essentially happens. Life happens, right? The minerals become what's called chelated, and in other words, they turn from a stone mineral that was housed in the water to a liquid mineral that is now alive. I mean, it's actually pretty amazing. That's the plant. That's the way that life happens in the plant. Oh boy, now they have a side-by-side rolling across there. You guys want to see it? Can you see it back there? Let's see. How do I get it so it's not all foggy? I don't know how to. Oh, there it is. Yeah, see, you can see I'm cruising. It's rolling by. Okay, so that's one form of life. But what's another form of life? The one that is most obvious that people don't really think about is conception, right? God gave us the ability to conceive life. When a man and a woman, the only two genders that he created, they fit together like Lego pieces. Remember the little round ball when you were kids? There was like blue on one side and red on the other, and you pull it apart and all the pieces fall out. And then it snaps back together, and then you pick up the triangle and you stick it in the triangle, and you pick up the star and you stick it in the star. Yeah, I mean, their shapes are made. They're made to fit together. That's the way God made man and women, men and women. So a conception is another form of life. So we have photosynthesis and we have conception. Well, there's actually another one, and there might be more. I'm just telling you what I've learned. I knew about photosynthesis. I knew about conception, but I didn't know about this thing called chemosynthesis. I've never heard about that before until recently when I was researching this Hunga volcanic eruption. And what chemosynthesis is it's a form of life that doesn't require light. And it happens way deep down in the ocean. It's really crazy. Look it up on YouTube or something. You'll see some videos of it. But there's actually organisms that can somehow, there's life happens at this chemosynthesis. So what it is you have these fissures that are blowing this steaming hot water out of the core of the earth, and it's blowing it into the ocean. And somehow life is conceived around that. And it's just, to me, it's just magical. That's why it makes me think, man, there's probably other forms of life, because God enabled conception. He enabled the photosynthesis process. And now there's this chemosynthesis where there's life. There's probably other ones as well. So we know that there isn't enough water to flow down to cause the rivers to flow without these fissures, the earth pushing water out into the mountains underneath the ground that then flows out and down the rivers. There's this natural cycle. We know that there's a natural cycle where water is picked up from the earth and the ocean mainly, and it's carried over the land by clouds, and it's dropped, and it's either rain or it's hail or it's snow. And the snowpack, especially on the mountains that are very high, that contributes to the water flow as the cycles change every single year, and you get this water flow down the rivers. But what's not discussed is these fissures that are superheated. They're super hot, right? It's could be even several hundred degrees of this steam that's coming out of the core of the earth. And my problem with that is one of the big things that people point to, again, this is big point number 2 to dismantle the climate change, the reason why you've not heard of the Hunga volcanic eruption, is because these weirdos like to tell you and I that when we hop an airplane and go wherever, or get in our boat and go cruising, or have a campfire or do whatever, that we're increasing the temperature of the ocean. Do you see the problem? Just think of everything that you do in life that affects the temperature of the water. I can promise you that for me individually, and even for my family, and I'm sure it's the same for you, I am not impacting the temperature of the ocean over my entire life to even a fraction of how much one of those superheated fissures that are under the ocean, blowing this superheated steam into the bottom of the ocean, is affecting it. How about, do you see what I mean? Like if the ocean, all of a sudden the ocean starts boiling or something, it's like, okay, that's not from us. That is from the Earth's natural process. And by the way, it's like it's like when you go to draw bath water and you don't realize that you didn't turn it ultra hot, and it's like lukewarm, and so like halfway through you turn it ultra hot and it never gets hot. It just doesn't. You got to start hot, and in fact the tub itself might even need to be warmed up. So just think about, when you're blowing this steam, this superheated steam into this body of water with quadrillion gallons of water that's cold, super cold, especially at the bottom of the ocean, that steam is almost instantly turned into water in the ocean, and it just really doesn't hardly affect the temperature at all. But you've got this millions of these fissures in the bottom of the ocean blowing out this hot steam. My point is that is way more powerful than anything that any human is going to do on this planet. There's just nothing that we could do that could affect the temperature of the ocean to the extent that what these hot fissures are doing. And then you tie that into this incredibly interesting process of what's going on inside the core of the earth. And this is where I just want to mention petroleum products, crude, because these products were named what is it called? Fossil fuel. It was named fossil fuel decades ago. Why do you think they did that? The reason why they did that is because they want you to think of crude or petroleum products and they all got fossilized and then they turned into crude. You see how that kind of that scheme makes you think, oh, there isn't very much crude out there. There's not very much oil. We need to preserve it. It's just hogwash. The truth is, God made this earth to produce petroleum for us to use for fuel, just as he made it to produce coal. And guess what? People harp on coal. The only drawback to coal, there's a couple things. Number one, the extraction process used to be just deadly. It was very difficult, but it's changed because a lot of it's mechanical now. And the second was the exhaust. Well, guess what? They have washers for the exhaust now that basically nothing, no particles get out of these coal-fired plants. This lunacy of these people going after coal and all this kind of stuff, it's all about money. And let me just give you an example, and then I'll come back to this whole petroleum products and stuff. Joe Obama and his entire Biden crime family is taking lots of money from around the world. I heard recently that some of the money that's being laundered around is actually some of the money that came from America that was laundered through other countries and then back to them, which wouldn't surprise me. But I find it interesting that a few months ago, Joe Obama hosted, I believe it was folks from Nigeria, their leadership, could have even been their president, but certainly the people that were in charge of their energy system. And they had just 3 days after they met with Joe Obama, they signed a deal with China to buy all of their photovoltaic from China. So doesn't that seem interesting that our president, supposedly the resident, is basically brokering deals with China to sell photovoltaic, that's solar panels, to another country? And then that country that they're getting it from is flowing illegal funds into the Biden crime family. Absolutely amazing to me. But okay, back to petroleum products and this interesting process inside the core of the earth. So crude comes from pressure. It comes, obviously there's certain ingredients that are needed, but there's also pressure. There's pressure beyond what even is probably even conceivable for us with regards to the creation of this crude that goes on inside. We know, I've explained to you how there's this cycle of water that is flowing through the earth, and that is for our good. The water needs to flow to the high places so it can run down to the low places and we can use it on the way. You know, that's one of the benefits of us having these dams on our rivers, is we now turn those into power generating stations, and we are able to use the water for irrigation, and it creates a more stable sanctuary like water table so that we can use that river for transportation. And it saves a ton of energy and a ton of trucks on the road and rubber tires and all this kind of stuff to be able to use, you know, a barge to move what would take 150, 250 trucks to move all that stuff, you know, like grain, for example, or different things like that, can move it out to the ocean, and then it can be exported. So it can just move it to train stations and different things like that, so that can be done. Very inexpensive way to move it. So the earth creates crude inside of it, and guess what? If we don't use it, it's going to come bubbling out of the ground. It is going to get pushed right out of the ground into our backyard. And we have got to use it. We've got to drill. We have to use it. We have thousands of years worth of crude that we know of underneath America right now. And we don't even know of all of it. This is just certain pockets, especially one that I know is well known underneath the Dakotas, North and South Dakota. Incredible amounts of crude underneath there. And so And then, of course, the burning of it, the use of it, the refining of it into diesel and into gas. It's interesting that progress never seems to be good enough for progressives. When I was a kid, you were getting sub 10 miles a gallon on these vehicles, especially big ones, these big tanks. They had steel that was like 18 gauge on the fenders of these old cars back when I was young. Probably even bigger than that when I was really little. Thicker. That's very thick steel versus this, tinfoil stuff they're using now, and even using plastics and composites and different things like that. And these cars got terrible fuel economy, but now, we're getting 40, 50, 60 miles to the gallon. Some of these hybrids are just killing it, right? Which, by the way, what on earth is wrong with a hybrid? Why in anyone's right mind would you push for an EV when you have the option of a hybrid? You don't need to plug it in. You don't need to stop. It charges its own batteries on the way. It gets 30, 40, 50, 60 miles to the gallon. And it's incredibly efficient. Like, it's amazing, right? And so we've like 4, 5, 6, 7 times we've improved the efficiency of these fuels especially in terms of transportation. Diesel, for example, now look at the exhaust on diesels. It's much cleaner. The diesels run much higher compression. They burn much cleaner than they used to. The diesel itself is refined and is much cleaner. And the exhaust that comes out of it is much, much cleaner than it was, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But we don't get any credit for that progress. We have to just completely, go off the rails and do all this craziness that is happening. So that's my rant about petroleum products and how it really doesn't have much of an impact on climate change, if any at all. In fact, I'll even go as far as to say it would be a wild stretch to believe that humanity has an effect on climate change. It would be very difficult to get me to believe that. And I'll say that part of the reason why is because people are deceived as to how much of the planet we actually occupy. And I'll just give an example. So think about in your mind how much space it would take to occupy every person on the planet. And most people would think, well, you must need like a good portion of a country if you were to stack everybody in, to one place. If we collected everybody from China and everybody from India and Canada and the US and Europe and we put them all together. Could we fit them on my property here? Actually, we could. And let me explain how. 1/4 mile wide, 1/4 mile deep, 1/4 mile tall. So you can see my hands. 1/4 mile cube. You can put every person in the planet in a 1/4 mile cube. And this planet, remember, is how big? 8,000 miles in diameter. And you can fit every human being in a 1/4 mile cube. So how much effect do we really have on climate? So what is it that they really want? What is it that they really want to use this climate agenda for? I'll tell you, it's the same as every age-old thing that every evil tyrant has ever wanted. They want control. And they want to control you through fear. That's a good point, Greg. That was something I actually wanted to mention. The carbon that they talk about, we're actually short on carbon on the planet. You could increase the carbon 20x and the planet would turn more green because plants love carbon. They chew on it. They love it. Trees love it. They just love it. They chew on it. It's like a fertilizer for them. And so this lunacy, this idea that we need to decarbonize and we need to reduce carbon, you're going to make it harder for your garden to grow. Trust me, I know. It's hard to get your garden to grow. Farmers, they have some talent. Anybody who thinks you just put a seed in the ground and water it and kind of like go drink a beer, they don't know anything about farming. We need lots of carbon on this planet. And so what is it that they actually want? They want to know that they have control, and they'll control you through fear. They'll tell you that the earth is going to end. I'm 55 years old, and I can't tell you how many times ever since I was a little kid, probably 7 years old, looking at the TV screen, to some moron telling you that the earth is going to end in 10 years or 12 years or 20 years. Well, it never did. They were all wrong. It keeps going. And I think AOC probably, I don't know whether it was 4 or 6 years ago, she said, well, we've got 12 years left. And it's like, well, we're getting there. It doesn't look like it's ending. And so what do they want? They want control. They want money. They want power. They want control. It's no different. Go read your Bible. God tells us exactly what the ills of humanity are. And we see it played out right here and right now. And to the extent that we are quiet, to the extent that we don't register to vote and we don't pay attention and we don't vote, we are complicit with a lot of the stuff that's going on. And so I want to encourage you to not be. I want to encourage you to get involved, to educate yourself. I am an engineer. I have a very high IQ. I love America. I love Jesus. I want to see America thrive. I want to see everybody live in peace. I want to see us take the freedom and the natural rights that God has given us, that we have documented within our Constitution. I want to see it spread all across the world. If there's anything I'm disappointed about in American greatness, is that we haven't done a better job of sharing our natural rights. We've sort of tried to evangelize the world and talk about Jesus, which is the most important for sure. But why haven't we talked about the principles that God has upon human people, like our natural rights? And I think that's very, very important, and it's something we need to do a better job of, rather than going in and taking over countries and trying to settle our own regimes and install our own leadership. We ought to just teach the population of that country to understand what their natural rights are, so that they can go and start their own populist movement, and they can overthrow their own government, which is going to be messy, just like it was for the United States when we had the Revolutionary War, just like it was for the United States when we had the Civil War. That's what we could do. We can encourage these populations and then let them figure it out. Help them figure it out. Yeah, there's death and destruction that follows that. But guess what? There was death and destruction in Japan after we dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But what followed that? What followed that period? What followed the period of the death and destruction of the Civil War? What followed the period of the death and destruction of the Revolutionary War? What followed those periods? The Spanish-American War, incredibly bloody. What follows those periods is an incredible abundance. And if you read Proverbs 14:4, it says that when the stable is empty, it's clean. When there's no animals in it, it's clean. And that's what a lot of us like. It's like, oh, kids are a pain because they make the house a mess. But what follows the mess? If you read the rest of Proverbs 14:4, it says, but an abundant harvest follows the ox. And so you have to accept the fact that the stable is going to be dirty, and it's going to require maintenance, and it's going to require energy and effort in order for you to see a harvest coming to follow it. And that's exactly what we're seeing in America today. And so I want to encourage you to go and register to vote. Don't ever, ever again say that my vote doesn't matter. Go register today. Vote in every single election. And do your best to study it to the extent that you have the appetite to do it. But make sure you vote, and find people like me, or people that really understand what's going on in our country and our society and why it's so important. We have an opportunity here to take back Washington State. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen this year or in 2 years or in 2 years after that. Elect me, and I promise you I will help push it forward. As I said earlier in this, I have a specific plan for how we can take Washington State back, and I'm excited to be a part of implementing that, but I need to get elected first. So as I wrap up, let me just ask you, just fervently, if you are not volunteering for my campaign, please start sending some money, whatever you can afford. The max donation is ridiculous. It's $14,500 per person. If you've got a lot of money, send some money to my campaign. If you don't have a lot of money, send something. But if you can't do anything, which is very few of you, because you're sitting there looking at either a device or a computer screen that costs a lot of money, and probably have habits and a lifestyle that costs a lot of money, you can do something. And we literally are in the fight of our lives. I'm incredibly honored to be endorsed by President Trump. We have an incredible opportunity here to take back the state and to disinfect this congressional seat of a Trump impeached so-called Republican, and we need to take advantage of that. We have got every single thing lined up in our favor, and I need your support and I need your vote. I need you to tell everyone that you know that lives in Central Washington to vote for Jared Sessler. I'm endorsed by President Trump. I'm endorsed by the House Freedom Caucus. I'm endorsed by many members in Congress who sit near and around Dan Newhouse, and they have told him, we're endorsing and supporting your opponent because we cannot count on your vote. He doesn't have the momentum. He doesn't have the relationships. He doesn't have the people to be able to get stuff done for the American people. And I'm already welcome there with open arms, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So please don't let today go by without going to my website and making a donation to support what I'm doing. I very much appreciate it. For those of you who are located in Central Washington, we are going to be starting our Freedom Tour on the 27th of June, and we're going to be doing over 50 events in about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks before we have the election. So the ballots will be out in less than 5 weeks. So we're going to be doing that Freedom Tour as the ballots are arriving in your boxes, and we're going to be going all over this district. And I hope to have a lot of you come out to those events and shake my hand and tell me what you think. And let me encourage you, let me inspire your friends and your family, and please encourage me and pray for me that I have the energy and the strength to repel this just absolute lunacy, and that I have the time and the mindset to stay healthy and just to continue to keep learning and allowing God to connect the dots in my mind with a lot of these things, like this, this Hunga Tonga volcanic eruption and the connection between that and these fissures, and how this whole climate change thing is a big hoax and all that kind of stuff. So I covet your prayers and I appreciate it. God bless you. Thank you for watching tonight. I managed to get this done in less than an hour, which I'm very excited about. I've got a lot of other topics that I'd love to talk about, but as I mentioned, I had to do a TV show today, and I got all dressed up for it. And I thought, you know what? Let's go live. And I actually had to do a photo shoot today too. It's really cool. Did a photo shoot in our field with a bunch of cattle, and I was holding a basketball, and it's kind of this thing we're doing. It's really cool. So you'll see that coming out soon. But God bless you. I'm starving. I haven't eaten much today, so I'm gonna go find out what's going on. I see my wife and my mom looking at something there. They're probably checking out this beginnings of the sunset that's starting to come upon us. So God bless you, and thank you for watching. And please like, subscribe, share, follow me on all the different platforms. We got Facebook. We have my personal page on Facebook. We have a campaign page on Facebook. We have I've even got this application I'm using to stream this video allows me to go to LinkedIn, which I'm never on LinkedIn, but I'm sure I have lots of friends there. YouTube, obviously Twitter, renamed the absolute dumbest branding. I love Elon Musk and the way he thinks and stuff, but rebranding Twitter to X was the dumbest branding move that was ever made in the history of the world. And then on Instagram as well. So please follow me on those. I'm at Sessler on Twitter, and I think Jared Sessler on the rest. So God bless you and have a great night.